We are living in an era of rapid, overwhelming urbanization, and it is putting immense pressure on our global climate. The sheer density of human activity in modern metropolitan centers requires a staggering amount of energy, largely supplied by burning fossil fuels. This infographic highlights exactly where the problem is concentrated. Looking at the top panel, the data shows that cities are the primary drivers of this crisis, producing over 70. Protecting urban centers from severe climate impacts requires bridging a massive funding gap. The challenge has expanded beyond the drafting tables of urban planners and civil engineers. It is now a problem of capital mobilization. To secure that missing capital, city authorities are changing how they talk about development. Instead of pitching traditional land use plans, they're adopting the risk management vocabulary of investment bankers to attract private equity and institutional investors. That vocabulary revolves around ESG, environmental, social, and governance criteria. When the United Nations introduced this framework in 2004, it was designed strictly for the corporate world. It gave investors a way to evaluate a company's non-financial risks, like its carbon footprint or labor practices, before buying its stock. Today, those exact corporate metrics are being applied to the physical environment. City planners are using ESG scores to evaluate real estate portfolios and design municipal master plans. A framework built to audit balance sheets is now dictating the layout of future neighborhoods. Applying an investment formula to a living, breathing city comes with a serious side effect. It alters the physical geography of the area and directly influences which populations can afford to live in the sustainable cities of the future. In practice, the environmental pillar of ESG directs private funding toward tangible green infrastructure. It incentivizes projects like installing solar canopies over transit stops, planting urban forests to reduce heat islands, and enforcing strict emission limits on large commercial buildings. The social pillar attempts to shape the human experience within those spaces. It pushes municipalities to rewrite their maps, prioritizing inclusive zoning laws that mandate high-density housing, mixed-use developments, and neighborhoods where residents can easily walk to essential services. The governance pillar ensures these projects actually deliver on their promises. It relies on public-private partnerships to fund the work, while using digital data networks to track everything from air quality to traffic flow, keeping developers accountable to their investors. When these three pillars work together, they form an efficient engine. Abstract climate goals convert into concrete infrastructure projects that investors are eager to finance. But a system rooted in financial returns behaves like a financial market. Capital naturally flows toward the paths of least resistance and highest reward. Rather than distributing resources evenly across a municipality, ESG frameworks actively seek out and cluster around what analysts call investment-worthy geographies. This capital-seeking behavior creates a stark spatial imbalance. Already connected urban cores receive a flood of sustainable technologies and transit upgrades, while under-resourced peripheral neighborhoods are entirely bypassed by the investment wave. This uneven distribution of green capital triggers a recognized socio-spatial consequence: green gentrification. This chart visualizes the core paradox. As a neighborhood receives a massive influx of green infrastructure, local property values spike. That sharp rise in the cost of living prices out the vulnerable populations the social pillar was designed to protect. Without aggressive policy safeguards in place, the framework actively drives socio-spatial inequality. A system intended to save the city ends up reserving its sustainable future exclusively for those who can afford the newly inflated rent. The root of this problem lies in translation. A corporate framework evaluates an isolated asset, like a single factory or an office building. When planners copy and paste that exact framework onto a complex, interconnected municipal environment, it fails to account for the displacement of human residents. To correct this, urban researchers argue that municipalities must abandon corporate models and develop city-specific ESG scoring systems. These localized frameworks use territorial indicators to measure the regional impact of a project, assessing how a new development affects the entire community's ecosystem. This materiality heat map builds city-specific scores by mapping social variables against environmental targets like sustainable planning and renewable energy. By focusing on the dark red intersection points, planners pinpoint where environmental investments overlap with the highest community need. Transitioning to this localized framework allows cities to attract essential private equity while structuring investments in a way that actively protects vulnerable local populations. Better data must be backed by aggressive policy. If a city accepts private capital to build a new eco-district, that green investment has to be forcefully paired with redistributive housing programs and strict anti-displacement laws to ensure current residents can actually stay. As outlined in this document from the World Economic Forum, city governments have to change their posture. They must move beyond simply facilitating outside money. Through strict regulations and strategic planning, local authorities have to actively direct private capital to enforce these sustainability strategies. The corporate financial world has provided the essential capital and blueprint, but it cannot be left to govern itself. The final responsibility falls on local governance to ensure the green cities of the future prioritize social equity alongside environmental resilience.